it's me again. So accidentally I was going to end the call, but end up answering it, and then uh, they hang up, and now I'm okay. Here's the second half of what I was saying. But yeah, so basically, thinking about like how that trauma impacted me. It's just so many big things, so many very significant things, but also so many like small things. Because I talked about this before, how I struggled to trust people, for so long, and I mean, and that is a pretty obvious outcome, for being honest, because basically, yeah, it's very kind of like somebody breaks your somebody who you trust breaks your trust, then suddenly like you think twice with like anybody else in the future. And I think I mentioned yesterday, like I'm doing better in terms of like trusting people more, and kind of like not letting my fears and insecurities get in the way, which doesn't mean that I'm like blindly trusting people. Also, kind of like knowing what to say or how much to say is half the battle, because I think sometimes I struggle with like saying I don't say enough, and at other times I say too much. I think that I'm at a point where I don't care so much when I overshare, but I would rather not overshare, because I think that there's like a lack of adjustment, when I'm kind of like oversharing, because sometimes like the reason why you share something or you share too much is because you feel the urge to talk about it, so I'm doing therapy, so I'm in therapy. Yeah, I'm going there. It's like I have two therapists at this point in time. I go to each of them like every other week. So I have like kind of like a session every week. I think like lately I've been kind of like doing better, because my therapist, the one that is not from the health center, she 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 had her son had an accident, so she's kind of like taking it slowly. And honestly, like it's kind of like it's good timing, because I'm doing pretty okay, so it's not that I'm not saying that I don't need therapy, but I do think that I'm okay with like less therapy, as I said, like I'm only having the only therapist from the health center. Only she's the only one seeing me right now. But what I wanted to say is that, as I've already said it, like I think that if I share too much, it's because there's something that is hurting inside and I have to address it. And if I'm not sharing enough, it's because I'm hurt inside. Like I need to address it as well. But for different reasons, but the consequence is the same. And I think that I've been really learning from like these experiences. I think that I don't know. I'm taking note. I'm pretty much in a very ideal scenario, where I kind of like I kind of like overshare, or I don't share enough, and then I kind of like I notice it, but it's not really bugging me. It's not really getting me to feel disappointed in myself. So that's just like kind of like a small thing. Naturally, there is, sometimes like it is depending on what you are sharing or not. It's more than a small thing, but yeah, like that is kind of and I don't know, balance is the key here. I want to be a balanced, healthy, wholesome person, and the key is for me to acknowledge the past, particularly even like the things that I feel like I have already acknowledged, because sometimes like you just acknowledge them, you haven't really accepted them, and that is kind of like the way I was talking about, like this this winter break back in 2011, when I was traumatized and I couldn't really get anything done, and I ended up kind of like getting to the point. And like that semester, I had like more examples of that kind of like being the case. Like I had more situations in which I was I had more situations in which like I failed. And I don't know, I feel like I disappointed people, but I'm not saying that you should care too much when you disappoint people, because sometimes they have realistic expectations. But in this particular case, I really feel like I really feel like I could have done better. I think that I could have communicated. I mean, I was kind of like traumatized, and I didn't really have those memories, so I didn't know what was happening to me. It was just kind of like happening, and I really I don't know, but I feel like I was struggling and I didn't communicate with anyone, to kind of like ask for help, which is, something that also changed. Because I think that before, like, I wasn't opposed to calling people for help, but like after that trauma, like I really, as I said, like I was struggling to trust people, and that translated on, me kind of like fighting some battles alone when I didn't have to be alone, So I think that I could have asked for help, but I think that in my head it felt like failure, and also I was kind of like worried about, for example, what like my parents would say. And the funny thing is that like today, I know that they would have not judged me; they would have helped me. But at the time, like I guess I had that feeling. I would hate to kind of like admit that I blame myself for the whole situation, because I absolutely did nothing wrong. I didn't really do anything if something was done to me. And but I don't know, like maybe that was a little kind of like oversight, from my part. I It's not like an oversight. It's just that I don't maybe because I don't think I was blaming myself for the situation, but I was blaming myself for like the things that I couldn't do after that, and without getting to the root of the problem, like I was just kind of like walking around aimlessly, trying to throwing everything at the wall and see what stuck, and most of the things did not stick. So there's that. But I wish that I could have, like go back. Some of the people I disappointed, specifically because something happened to me, but but I didn't really ask for help, which meant that like I failed sometimes in terms of like assignments and deliveries, and some of them were group projects, so I didn't really do as much as I could. I didn't really do my part, all that. And it's also interesting that I basically I took too much to do, like I was not delegating, and that kind of like did not help, because basically I was taking an assignment, and instead of like doing something about it, I was kind of like not doing it. And so that's what I mean when I was disappointing people. So I wish I could talk like to some of those individuals and apologize, because that is kind of apologize. And maybe I will do this. I don't have the phone numbers of anybody, and I don't have social media, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. So yeah, I doubt they care about this at this point in time, but I care. Like I feel the urge to say something. But yeah, because sometimes like you can be apologetic about something without still acknowledging that you were a victim of a situation, that circumstances happen, but there's still, because I think ultimately the thing, like I understand why I never really reach out for help, but it would have been better if I had. But that's the thing, like what would I said? I wouldn't have known the root of the problem, so I would just be like, I'm struggling with this. And as I said, I felt like a failure, and I used to be so scared of failing, and it's interesting because like high school was when I started to kind of like face reality, that I wouldn't get it, right every single time. I remember one subject that I had in my first year of high school, which was something about management. I was in high school we were also doing a technical course in business management and administration, and I got like probably like the worst grade I've ever had in any class, in anything in my entire academic history. I had a 64 out of 100, and that kind of crushed me. But it was interesting because I tried to talk to my teacher at a time and ask him to be like, why is that I got this grade? And he was just like, he kind of like just ended with like saying that he was, not that he was disappointed, but that he had expected better from me, which crushed me. But to be fair, I think I maybe needed that to some extent. Like it's not really kind of like helpful on the long run. It just made me kind of like focus on some personality traits that I had that were not really good for me. But I think that because I think that all around me I had people who were kind of like being supportive. They were kind of like, no, it's okay, it's not that bad. So I think maybe I was kind of like going crazy in a certain way, and I needed like somebody to be like, yeah, that was bad. you know, because for example, my parents, they have always been super supportive, and I think that, you know, like showing them that grade, they were just like, you know what, you passed. It's not what you want, which is also like really great from them, because I've always had this thing, you know, like where I expected too much from myself. And this, you know, great way in which this translated to was, you know, my academic life, because I wanted to be kind of like a straight A student. I wanted to be top of my class, and some of that, and I kind of like managed to kind of like be top of my class. But it does have the issue that I wasn't, for example, in high school, I wasn't, my school had like a different focus than a lot of other high schools that were focusing on like the exam that you have to take at the end of high school that kind of like gets you, you know, into college. And that was not the focus of my high school, and that was, you know, kind of like an interesting thing, because I didn't know, it was a new experience, you know. It kind of like it contextualized some things for me. It kind of made me think more about the future, you know. Like my high school, like they really had this thing of like they prepare you for life, not just for this exam, not just for college, you know. We were kind of like getting prepared for life. It's interesting because like right now I look back and I feel like, yeah, that is very much true, you know. Like they had like that goal and they succeeded in it, but yeah, I think at the time, like what I wanted was too unattainable for me, for my own good. I was, you know, too invested in you know, like those situations, and I kind of, you know, because as I said, I graduated top of my class, but you know, my grade was like 87, which is very far away from 90. I mean, technically, you know, it's not that far away, but you know, like I didn't crush 90 like that. That sucked, you know. Like that made me kind of like feel very disappointed in myself. And but you know, like I was kind of like in the right context, as I said, because you know, that was kind of like the highest grade of everybody who kind of like graduated that year, out of like 100 and something people. Like that's something. uh, but basically, what I'm trying to say is that right now I look back and I'm like, yeah, college, it kind of like it prepared me for life, but in some ways that I didn't really see at that point in time, you know, like when I was graduating high school. But you know, like this, your academic life is important. And I mean, if you decide to be a scholar, like that is always going to be a significant part of you and of your life, because that's going to be kind of like what you're doing for a living. But you know, for most people, like, you know, you kind of like, you go to school, go to high school, and then you go to college, and you know, you might get, you know, a master's and then a PhD in something. But you know, I don't know, I think that the point is that that is not like the most important part of my life. It's kind of like, it's more of a tool, you know. Like that's, you know, like the thing. Your academic life is kind of like a tool for, you know, to kind of like help you achieve things. That's not the final product. But I was very kind of like stuck in that idea. So when I graduated, I was kind of like very disappointed, and I didn't, I don't know, I was, what can I say? I was a little disappointed. But right now, like I look back and I'm totally fine with it, because it's also like that's so far away. Like I graduated like a decade ago. You know, it's been so much has happened. Although at the same time, like it feels like not enough has happened. But I think I'm making up for it. You know, right now with me kind of like, you know, like getting a major that I'm invested in, and potentially like an internship also in this area, and I feel like I'm living again. You know, like it is very, you know, things are changing, but I can kind of like keep up, which is, you know, something that at so many different points in time it felt like I was being left behind. But right now I can finally be like, no, I am. This is kind of like my journey. You know, it was not what I kind of like thought when I was 13. I think I had a more linear version of what happened. You know, I thought that I would graduate high school, I would, you know, go to college, I would, I also wanted like a master's and doctorate and all that. But I would kind of go to school, I would kind of find a job at a company, and I was kind of like, you know, start climbing the ladder. And right now, these days, I don't even care about that ladder. So that is an interesting development, and it kind of like it changed my perspective, because I'm kind of like building my future as, you know, we speak. You know, like everything I'm doing is kind of, you know, like it's a building block, and I will. So I don't, you know, only time will tell was going to stick the landing, but I am doing things, for so long. And once again, like, I have to be kind to myself because, my mental health struggles. So yeah, I couldn't expect myself at several different points in the past decade to kind of like have been able to produce. Although there are some points where I was expecting myself to produce, and I struggled the same way that I struggled with my assignments, back when in the second half of 2011, after I had that rape situation, I struggled, and I had a lot of like different moments where I think that I felt a lot of guilt for a lot of those situations for many years, but I haven't been able to forgive myself, and that's probably why I want to reach out to some people I went to middle school with, because like I feel like I failed that, and I did. Like that is the case, because that's also kind of like an interesting development for my life, because before I used to kind of like think of everything as a failure, so I was very disappointed with myself and with the world all the time. And right now I can make a distinction. Right now I can look at something and be like, that was not a failure for my part. That just happened. Or maybe it was a failure, but like it's not that big of a failure. It's not that big of a deal. And then there are moments where I'm like, yeah, I failed. I have especially one. I'm thinking of one friend of mine who I kind of like, I disappointed, and the thing is that I kind of like admitted something, and that was disappointing. And it's the crazy reason is like, why did I admit that? It's because I wanted to kind of like, it should be cool or something, and we were kind of like playing version truth, and there was the end of the semester, of the first semester 2012, I think. And I don't know why I think about her specifically, but I wanna find her contact, and I want to apologize. It's not going to. I think it's doing this more for me than for her. I don't think she cares about that at this point in time. But I really feel compelled to try. I have no idea how I'm gonna. I don't have her number, and I don't have social media, so it's one of those things that. But yeah, I will apologize. I think that I will feel bad. Once again, I'm doing this for myself. Maybe I shouldn't even. I should think about her. Like, why does she care? I'm sorry. I don't know. But that is something that I think it's been a long way. Okay, another encounter. It's been a long way coming. That's the way to say this. And been in the making for a long time. But yeah, so as I said, like, I don't know, like that whole situation, I spent so much time thinking about this. I spent so many hours in therapy dissecting it, talking about it, and still, like, there are more things for me to find out, to this day. That is the complexity of the human mind, so that happened, and it changed me completely. I went from being a kind of like outgoing person to being completely isolated from everybody, and it didn't help because there were things I wanted to be before I like that had happened, and I think that I kind of like found solace because I did turn to religion, at that point in time, 2012, and 2011 maybe, but yeah, at some point in time I turned to religion, so I kind of like changed my views, but at the same time, like, I think that it was not hypocrisy, but like there were certain things that I was kind of like throwing them off, but it's like there's nobody. For example, I had, apart from like that situation when I was like that whole situation when I was 13, I had never, for example, kissed anybody, never being kissed and all that, and there was this whole thing of that made me feel kind of like inexperienced in a certain way. And back so basically the point I'm trying to make, that I was very much like, I'm not staying, because that is like how we refer to situations that you kind of like making out with, that back then was staying with somebody, and I was basically like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But the thing is, like, there was nobody kind of like asking me for it, so it's one of those things that I'm just like, am I really swearing this off because there's no possibility here. And this has to do with my upbringing and with the environment that I grew up in. I grew up very religious, so like it was kind of a scene, so people didn't really do it. Even people who were kind of sometimes like in a relationship, they weren't kissing because it was kind of a scene or something. Also maybe because they were kind of like young or something, because I'm talking about 13, so that was like the age where and it's interesting because like when you feel left out, you're thinking of like the people who have had those experiences, as opposed to people who haven't, because that was kind of a thing. Like when I think about the people who haven't been to Bali, they also there's like more of them than the ones that had. But like you see the ones who have. And as I said, like, so before like that whole situation, I really wanted to be kind of like popular and cool and all those things, and kind of like charismatic, likable, liked, I think just very normal teenage stuff that for the longest time I couldn't even admit to this. But the point I'm trying to make is that I had those thoughts, and I didn't really know what to do with them, what to do about them, because I found that, because I also think that the reason why I turned to religion in the first place was because like it kind of like offered me a sense of safety and of security, which is a fact that I had never really considered before, like that. But it does make sense, like you just surrender your fears and your anxieties, and you have the promise that is not going to happen again. Even if it might happen again, it does happen again. But yeah, so that is I feel like I lacked, this is something interesting that happened, because I felt very unprotected after that situation happened. And that is the type of thing that it really changed the way I saw the world, because I kind of like, I saw my parents as sort of like safe haven. I saw the church as a safe haven. I saw like the belief system as kind of like a guarantee of sorts. And it's kind of interesting because like it could have pushed me away from religion, but it brought me closer. Did I kind of like consider that to not be, I don't know, there are some incongruences here, but I think that I looked around and everything was a threat, and nothing kind of like groundbreaking about this. It makes sense, you were attacked, you kind of like, you start seeing threats everywhere, but I think that like my head really mixed the emotional threats with the physical threats. Like everything was in this one group, even though I kind of like didn't, I didn't dissect it at first, but anything, so like any thing, so even like cringing, like that is an interesting development. Like even cringing, like being cringe, like that was something that I was scared of. I didn't want to be cringe, but at the same time there were some things that spoke louder, because I can think of several cringy moments when I was a teenager, just like everybody else, but like that was kind of a threat that I felt, like that was something that informed the way I dealt with people, the way I kind of like I said things and I did things, yeah, so like everything was a threat, and I didn't, and I felt like I had to fight for myself, that there was nobody fighting for me. So yeah, so this is kind of contradictory, because on one hand, like I was very much like God's gonna protect me, but like you could argue that like, oh, God is gonna protect me, but he didn't the first time. So so I kind of like, I'm like, okay, I have God here, but I'm gonna, or maybe that's the thought, like I'm gonna like defend myself as well. I'm gonna learn how to defend myself. And I think that led to a lot of aggression from my part, because I kind of like, I saw threats everywhere, as I said, and the way that I kind of like, so I was very burdened, I was very overwhelmed every day with like this fear, like, which is kind of like the thing lately, fear, and how like it has molded me into being this person that I am, and how I'm trying to kind of like move away from that. But basically I was very much I was hurting, and I really felt like I had to kind of like protect myself, because if I didn't, nobody would have, and that is not a healthy mindset for you to have. I think like self-preservation is important, but it's interesting because like in this attempt of like me defending myself, I kind of like forsook self-preservation a lot, because I really believed at certain points in time that I could kind of like that I could take over some threats, some like situations that I definitely could not. I've been very fortunate that a lot of things they have only happened in my head, because the situations they don't present themselves for me. I have a pretty peaceful existence, like all things considered. I'm usually the bellicose element, in my life. So it's kind of, like it's interesting how, because like certain things had happened at different points in times, like things would have escalated because I was not one for the escalation, and I was always burdened, as I said. So I sometimes, like, that's the reason why people punch the walls, I mean, if I punch these walls, like it is this, I'm not even joking, it is a very thick wall, and but yeah, so that is, I would just hurt myself, but the point I'm trying to make is that kind of like punching somebody, being aggressive, like that helps, like you feel better, like that is not a healthy coping mechanism, but like it does accomplish something, and so yeah, but like as I said, like I'm trying to kind of like move past that. I don't want to I don't want that to be kind of like that person anymore. But as I said, like I think that my parents, they always highlight how this is God taking care of me, and I mean, I'm not gonna question that, and if that's what you believe in, that's what you believe in. But I kind of like I see their points sometimes, because things have aligned themselves in a lot of different ways. Very fortunately for me, like there are so many things that could have end badly. They could have ended badly, and they didn't. So I'm very fortunate in that way. I've been able to kind of like walk past, certain situations, and kind of like get through the other side. It's very victorious. There's definitely like a lot more things, not more things, but there's a lot of other things that were not ideal. Like this situation being one of them. But everything since, I don't know, like I have lots of examples of failures, and I can talk about this right now in a kind of like healthy way, because I'm kind of used to it, not used to it, but because you don't want to get used to failing, but I don't think it. I don't even think that I fail more than the average person. I think that I'm pretty much like there in the average. It's just that I had so many expectations, and they all kind of like they grew and grew with like every day, like they were becoming bigger and more significant than they've been the day before. So like nothing that I could ever accomplish would have felt like enough. I could have just saved the world, and that would not be enough. So that is something that I have to kind of like take into account, that just because I want something, it doesn't mean that it is doable. That is kind of like a journey for me to accept, and I am at a point right now where I have like more realistic expectations. Like I have found meaning in different ways. So for example, writing is a good example of that. Like me kind of like wanting to achieve things, but like in a way that's tangible and possible and plausible. And I don't know, it feels like a part of me it feels like I have given up, because I've given into kind of like reality, you could say. There's some things that I wanted that right now I kind of accept that they're not going to happen. And but I don't say this like as if like that is a burden, that I won't be enough. That's not like the case at all. I just realized what I really want, because for so long it was just like smoke and mirrors. I kind of like had this desires, but I wanted them because they would kind of like validate me, and I want to be able to validate myself. I don't want to need my circumstances to like do that job for me. Like I want to just look at myself and be like, yes, this is me, this is where I am at, this is who I am, this is what I want, and I want to be happy, with myself and with my life. And I've been doing pretty well lately, so it's easy for me to feel this way. But as I mentioned in the beginning of the other video, like I am starting to see some patterns, and I don't know if they're, what they mean. I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm just sometimes it's scary. Sometimes thinking of everything, all the worst case scenarios, everything that could have happened that fortunately did not happen. I think there's a lot of like embarrassment that I could have had at several different points in time, but I didn't. I was kind of like I was able to escape that situation. Sometimes on very small things, and I think this embarrassment goes hand in hand with cringe. So the same thing, same way that I'm like thinking about myself back then and how I'm, like how like there were certain things that happened that made me, that yes, there were some things that were kind of cringe, but I did embarrass myself a lot, and thankfully I can look back at those moments and just be like, oh, that was silly, like I don't care that much. But I think it shows growth, because the reason why sometimes I would look at those situations and be very embarrassed is not just because it was embarrassing back then, but because it felt like a travesty. It felt like I was rejecting myself and not my morals, but my ambitions. So it felt like I was intuitively. I don't know. But thankfully I can't remember those things these days, and. Yeah, and they kind of like, it's okay, because I no longer have those pretenses. I no longer have the pretense of being perfect. I can kind of like accept that, yeah, I said that, and what about it? What of it? And yeah, so life is good. Life is now. Life is now. And I wrote this down on my note, like, life is now. I want, to kind of like find joy in the present time. I want for the time being, I'm going to do that. And it's important for you to find joy in the past as well. But you find everything in the past. You find sorrow, you find, cheerfulness, you find, like this thing, you find apathy. So just a little bit of everything. And as I said, I really want to kind of like, to enjoy myself. I don't want to keep those pretenses. I don't want to, kind of like try to be somebody I'm not. I'm still figuring out, start this whole thing of me talking about whether I am outgoing or not. And I don't have to have the answer right now, but it's important for me to be kind of like open to the idea that I'm going to figure out something. And as I said, I think that every day I get closer to this version of myself that I want to be, the person that is balanced and is happy and can just do things and doesn't have to be burdened by the past. I want to live a free life and being kind of like overwhelmed by things that have already happened. They're like in the past. They're not. No, it's not the way to go. I don't want that for us. By us, I mean me. I don't want that for anyone, but I'm specifically talking about myself. So. But yeah, so am I outgoing? Am I not? It's just, yeah, it remains to be seen. Because as I said, like I have been, for example, just very small things, like when I'm in class, and being able to kind of like talk about something, I feel comfortable enough to do that. I don't always have, anything to say or anything to add, because sometimes people, they raise their hands not to ask something, but to add something. And so far I've been just asking things, but maybe I'm going to kind of like, find the courage to, if I can think of anything, just say something. But yeah, so outgoing, I'm figuring things out. And also I think that like it kind of like also has to do with you being kind of like embarrassed of yourself. So that is something that I can I will reflect on this and maybe kind of like bring this up earlier, not earlier, later, because yeah, like if I'm kind of like embarrassed about myself and about where I am at, which is not so much the case anymore, but for many years I avoided people because of that. Like when I was 2016, when I got the results of college applications, and I realized we did not have the money to kind of like go through any of them. I kind of like I shut down everybody. I kind of like pretended like, oh, I'm going there. So I just deleted, left the groups, deleted the contacts, information. I went, completely silent in a lot of different ways. And because I was kind of like embarrassed of, like this failure, it felt like a failure. Even though, as I said, it's just kind of like how things work. Like life is, yeah, like you're not gonna get everything that you want or everything you deserve even. And I'm not saying that like I deserve that, but it is definitely but I think that embarrassment, it prevented me from like talking to people because I was just so overwhelmed with shame that I couldn't handle anyone, and that didn't help with the whole, because I think that throughout high school I started to kind of like warm up and interact more with people, and got to a point, I mean, it never got to a point where I felt freely to talk about, for example, in the group chat. I mean, I was there, I was reading, I was participating in the sense that like I was, seeing what was happening, but I never really contributed, and that came from, I guess, shyness, which came from embarrassment. Like I wanted to be this kind of like self-actualized person, and sometimes the things I said and didn't really highlight that. They kind of and like they made me feeling some of those many emotions I didn't want to feel, because like I would start feeling that like that there was a threat. So there's that. Anyways, bye.